During a rapid-fire QA game, her husband's first love, Stella Vane, asked the son, "Do you like Mommy better or Auntie Stella?" Julian Sterling didn't hesitate for a second. The name Auntie Stella rolled right off his tongue. On their wedding anniversary, Sarah Miller was handling her mother's funeral alone. Her phone buzzed with over a dozen photos, a romantic candlelight dinner, red roses surrounding the table, fireworks lighting up the sky. In every photo, Ethan Sterling sat opposite the camera. He was either smiling while fastening a bracelet for Stella, peeling shrimp with intense focus, or mimicking her peace sign pose. The photographer was Sarah's biological son, Julian. To please his fathers, one that got away, Ethan and their son had cooked and eaten the last box of dumplings Sarah's mother had left for her. For the first time, Sarah felt that this marriage was utterly meaningless. She filed for divorce, booked a train ticket back to her hometown, and left without looking back. She didn't want the husband or the child anymore. After marriage, Ethan Sterling never really saw her. He only had eyes for Stella Vane. Even the child she had nearly died delivering didn't like her. He only wanted to cling to Stella. When she heard Julian had fallen off a horse during riding lessons, she rushed over, only to see Ethan arriving as well. He stood on the steps in a dark gray suit, striking and handsome, attracting the gaze of passers-by. Yet no one dared to approach him. Beside him stood a woman of elegance and beauty, Stella Vane. Her dark green dress outlined a slender figure, and her skin was as pale as porcelain. From a distance, they looked like a perfect match, a match made in heaven. The school nurse called out from behind the curtain, "Are Julian Sterling's parents here?" Just as Sarah was about to answer, Ethan responded in a deep voice. He took Stella's hand and walked in, not even glancing at Sarah. The homeroom teacher standing nearby knew Sarah was the mother. She looked at Sarah in shock. Sarah returned an awkward smile, lowered her eyes, and followed them inside. After the nurse gave detailed instructions, Ethan walked out supporting his limping son. 5-year-old Julian wasn't very tall, but his temperament was a carbon copy of his father's calm, even when injured. Seeing the thick gauze wrapped around his leg, Sarah's eyes filled with distress. She quickly bent down, wanting to pick him up. "Jules, is it bad? Did applying the medicine hurt? Let Mommy carry you, okay?" Faced with his mother's concern, Julian showed no emotion. He turned his face away coldly to avoid her and reached out to Stella. "Auntie Stella, I want you to carry me." Stella immediately picked him up and began to coax him softly. Sarah, her arms empty, froze in place, watching the scene unfold. Ethan looked at her coldly. "How do you take care of a child?" Julian wanted to ride. "Didn't you prepare his protective gear in advance?" Sarah's eyes reddened as she explained, "I put the gear in his bag last night." She was cut off halfway by Ethan. "If you prepared it, would he refuse to wear it? How could you come up with such a ridiculous excuse?" Seeing the couple about to argue in public, Stella quickly stepped in to smooth things over. "Since the child is fine, Ethan, don't blame Sarah. She certainly didn't do it on purpose. What mother in the world would harm her own flesh and blood?" With those words, the explanation stuck in Sarah's throat had to be swallowed. She stood aside, defeated. Seeing the tension pass, Julian, resting on Stella's shoulder, spoke in a childish voice. "Auntie Stella, didn't you say 2 days ago that you prepared a surprise for me?" Since the child had spoken, Ethan didn't want to pursue the matter further. He took Stella's hand and left. Left behind, Sarah watched the 3 receding figures, unable to hide the loss and sadness in her eyes. In the slanting evening sun, she stepped on her own shadow and walked slowly home, her mind in turmoil, recalling many past events. At 18, she had tested into a university in the capital with top scores. Her mother, a nurse, had saved Ethan's grandmother from a heart attack on the way to accompany her to school. The 2 families, worlds apart in status, were connected by this event. To repay the life-saving grace, grandmother Sterling insisted on having them stay at the house and wanted to introduce Ethan to her. Sarah, who had been a shining star in her small town, came to this concrete jungle forged of gold and silver and became an unremarkable face in a crowd of geniuses. And Ethan Sterling, whether in terms of family background, looks, or intellect, was undoubtedly at the top of the pyramid. Facing such an outstanding man every day, how could she not fall for him? But Sarah knew that without that accident, she wouldn't have even had the chance to meet him. So, Even with Grandmother Sterling's support, she never dared to have any presumptuous thoughts. Not to mention, Ethan had a girlfriend. He and Stella had been dating for 5 years. If Grandmother Sterling hadn't disliked her, he probably would have married her as soon as he was of age. Because his family disapproved, Stella eventually grew disheartened. Upon graduation, she broke up with him and flew to Europe for further studies. Heartbroken, Ethan drank to drown his sorrows. He lay in bed, calling out Stella's name in a drunken stupor. Worried about his health, Grandmother Sterling asked Sarah to bring him some hangover soup. She stayed in his room all night, only running back to her own room at 5 a.m., covered in bruises. Ethan had been drunk and remembered nothing of the previous night. Sarah didn't dare say a word and silently avoided him, until 2 months later when she suddenly started retching at dinner. Grandmother Sterling called a doctor, and it was discovered she was 2 months pregnant. In her panic, she revealed the truth of that night. With Grandmother Sterling presiding, Ethan was forced to marry her. 8 months later, she gave birth to Julian. Julian and Ethan were cut from the same cloth. Father and son were alike in every way. Even their attitude toward her was the same, cold and indifferent. What hurt Sarah the most wasn't that they weren't close to her, but that they were closer to Stella. It was one thing for Ethan not to forget his old flame. But Julian, who had been by Sarah's side for 5 years, had clung to Stella within 3 months of her return. Today wasn't the first time Sarah had experienced this kind of neglect. In a world of 4 people, her husband and son were right there, yet she had become the outsider. On the way home, Sarah bought a lot of foam padding and tape. As soon as she got home, she wrapped the table corners and wall edges, terrified Julian might bump into them again. She ran up and downstairs for 4 or 5 hours before finally finishing. Thirsty, she went to get a glass of water, only to hear the servants whispering in the kitchen. I saw with my own eyes this morning, the young master threw his protective gear out of his bag. He's been learning to ride for a year, yet he got hurt this afternoon. Could it be on purpose? Who says it isn't? He's never been close to the madam. Lately, he talks about Miss Vane every day. He probably wants to make Mr. Sterling misunderstand the madam so Miss Vane can marry in sooner. Hearing these words unintentionally, Sarah froze, her heart icing over. She couldn't help but recall how Julian had deliberately broken the bracelet Grandmother Sterling left her, then blamed it on her. How he messaged Stella and Ethan behind her back, lying to both sides to get them to take him out. How he purposely cut her evening gown so she couldn't attend the family dinner. Incident after incident, seemingly unintentional mistakes, but upon closer reflection, she was always the one blamed and scolded. Would a 5-year-old child really make things difficult for his own mother for the sake of an unrelated stranger? Sarah didn't dare think further. For the next few days, neither father nor son came home, nor did they call or text. Sarah could only track her husband and child through Stella's social media moments. The 3 of them went to the seaside to watch the sunset, holding hands tightly under the rosy clouds. The next day, Ethan took his son to Ocean World, singing the Song of the Sea together. The 3rd day, Stella told a story to a sleepy Julian while telling Ethan, who was filming, to change the angle. Watching the heartwarming scenes in the video, Sarah felt as if something was blocking her throat, making it impossible to breathe. She didn't know if she was sad because Julian, who usually had germophobia, agreed to lie in the same bed as Stella, or because she saw the comment below. "You really look like a family of 3. She clicked on the video repeatedly, watching it over and over, finally exiting to see a notification that Ethan had liked that comment. The tiny heart icon wasn't conspicuous, but to her eyes, it was as sharp as a needle, piercing straight into her heart and ripping open a bloody wound. Because of her sorrow, she didn't sleep well all night, waking up dazed several times. At breakfast, the chef suddenly asked about the menu for that night, and she remembered today was their wedding anniversary. But by noon, there was still no word from Ethan. Sarah finally couldn't help but call him. His tone wasn't good. He said coldly that he was too busy with work lately. Sarah knew he was lying but couldn't do anything about it, so she mentioned what Grandmother said when they got married. "Grandma said no matter how busy you are, you must come back to spend the anniversary with me every year. Have you forgotten?" Hearing this, Ethan's tone grew even more impatient, tinged with anger. "Besides using Grandma to pressure me, what else can you do? Making such a fuss over an anniversary. Did I say I wouldn't come back? Can't you wait until I get off work?" Before she could finish speaking, he hung up. Listening to the dial tone, Sarah felt a sting in her nose. She held back her tears, ordered a few dishes, asked the servant to buy some flowers, and then went upstairs to pick out clothes. Just after she finished her makeup, the sound of a car came from downstairs. She looked sideways and saw the driver dropping Julian off. The clouds over her heart finally parted, and she hurried downstairs to hug him. Perhaps because they hadn't seen each other for a long time, Julian was unusually affectionate today. Not only did he not resist her hug, but he also actively said he wanted to go to the amusement park. It was the first time in 5 years he had made a request of Sarah. Naturally, she was ecstatic and agreed immediately. "Of course Mommy wants to go with you, but let's wait a little while. Let's wait for Daddy to come back and go as a family, okay?" But Julian shook his head repeatedly, even pulling her arm and acting spoiled, insisting on going right now. Sarah was afraid he would lose interest if they waited, so she got in the car with him. His leg hadn't fully healed, so he couldn't go on any rides. He just wanted ice cream and specifically asked Mommy to buy it. Sarah had to leave him on a bench and went to queue, catching her breath. But when she returned with the ice cream, the bench was empty. Her vision went black for a second. Clutching the ice cream, she ran through the entire park but found no trace of her son. She collapsed on the ground panting, tears pouring down like rain, feeling as if the sky had fallen. She hurriedly called the police. After an investigation, the police told her the child had already gone home. She froze in place. Her son went back without saying a word. Seeing Julian sitting on the sofa flipping through a book after she got home, Sarah's suspended heart finally settled. Wiping away her tears, she stepped forward to hug him, but he frowned and dodged her. Seeing the sticky ice cream on her hands, she knew his germophobia was likely acting up. She quickly stepped back to create some distance and asked softly, "Jules, why didn't you tell Mommy you were coming home?" Julian flipped through his book without looking at her, his tone flat. "I couldn't play on anything, and you took forever to come back, so I asked the butler to bring me home. Did you really not notice everyone was gone?" The child was missing. Sarah had nearly lost her soul. How could she have noticed those things? But seeing him sitting safe and sound in front of her, she didn't want to argue. She simply offered some earnest advice. "Don't do this in the future. Do you know how worried Mommy was when you disappeared?" Seeing him nod slightly, Sarah didn't want to disturb him further and went upstairs to wash up. After changing out of her dirty clothes, she picked up her phone to check the time, only to find Stella had sent a video a few minutes ago. As soon as she clicked it, she saw Stella holding a stack of cards, playing a quick-fire QA game with Julian. "Jules, do you like apples or pears?" "Pears." "Do you like swimming or soccer?" "Soccer." "Do you like Mommy better or Auntie Stella?" Hearing the last question, Sarah paused the video. It took a lot of mental preparation before she pressed play again. Julian didn't hesitate for a second. The name, Auntie Stella, rolled right off his tongue. Sarah's bitter face contrasted sharply with Stella's bright smile on the screen. But what hurt her most wasn't Julian's answer, but the sentences that followed in the video. "You like Auntie Stella so much? Do you want Auntie to be your mommy? If you do, you have to create more opportunities for me and your daddy to be together. Tomorrow is your parents' wedding anniversary. As long as you trick your mom into going out, I can go on a date with your dad." Julian nodded heavily, each nod like a hammer striking Sarah's heart. She never expected to hear these words from her son's mouth, nor did she expect her past suspicions to be facts. Just as the first wave of shock subsided, a second barrage followed. Stella sent over a dozen photos in a row. A romantic candlelight dinner, red roses surrounding the table, fireworks lighting up the sky. In every photo, Ethan sat opposite the camera. He was either smiling while fastening a bracelet for her, peeling shrimp with intense focus, or mimicking her peace sign pose. Every expression was vivid and joyful looks Sarah had never seen directed at her. Her breathing became erratic instantly. With trembling hands, she forwarded everything to Ethan, waiting for his reply. 1 minute, 10 minutes, an hour passed. No movement from the other side. Instead, Stella sent another video. She was holding his phone and gently deleting Sarah's messages. Opposite her, Ethan watched her actions without saying a word. Faced with Sarah's silent questioning, he didn't care at all about the injustice she suffered. Not only was he stingy with explanations, but there was even a smile on his lips. The one who isn't loved should be the one to leave, don't you think? Seeing this provocation, Sarah could no longer hold back her sobs. Tears dripped onto the phone, pooling into a puddle that covered the clasped hands of the couple in the photo. She felt as if she were suffering death by 1,000 cuts. The intense pain in her heart made it impossible to stand. The phone screen was shattered, a crack running right through the wedding photo on the wallpaper, seemingly foreshadowing something. She stared blankly at that crack until a sudden phone call distracted her. Seeing the word "Mom" on the screen, she quickly wiped her tears, cleared her throat, and answered. Mother and daughter exchanged pleasantries. After Mrs. Miller said she had sent her some dumplings, she heard Sarah's voice sounding raspy and couldn't help but worry. "Sarah, why are you crying? Did someone mistreat you?" Sarah didn't want her mother to worry, so she quickly said she was crying because a movie was too touching. Mrs. Miller sighed, her voice sounding old and low. "If you're not happy there, just come back. You still have Mom." Hearing this, Sarah felt even more bitter inside. She sniffled and whispered, "Okay." Mrs. Miller had sent it via express delivery, so Sarah received the package a day later. Looking at the expensive shipping fee, she wondered why her mom spent so much money to send a few boxes of handmade dumplings. Just as she was about to call and ask, her neighbor Mrs. Wang's number suddenly popped up. A bad premonition slowly rose in her heart. "Sarah, your mother had a sudden heart attack and passed away. We're watching over her at the hospital. Come back quickly." Clang. The bowl of dumplings Sarah had just served crashed to the floor, sliding and rolling in all directions. She felt as if a string inside her body had snapped. Her mind went blank, and the thundering sound of her heartbeat echoed in her ears. Everything that happened next felt like a dream. She called Ethan. He said he was on a business trip and couldn't make it. She called the school. Julian said he had too much homework and didn't want to go. The only 2 family members she had left in the world refused to return with her for the funeral. She could only embark on the journey home alone. From landing at the airport to rushing to the hospital. From seeing her mother looking as if she were asleep to holding the memorial tablet and following the funeral procession up the mountain, 7 days passed in a flash. She sat in the empty courtyard, listening to the gossip from next door. Sarah's mom passed away, and neither her husband nor child came back. They are rich people. Why would they come to a small place like ours for a poor relative's funeral? Poor Sarah. Her eyes, dry after days and nights without sleep, couldn't shed another tear. Her phone, which she hadn't turned on, showed no unread messages or missed calls. Instead, a text message popped up in the notification bar. "Dear Miss Sarah Miller, the high-speed train ticket you booked." She gripped her phone tightly and stood up. Looking around, she didn't see her mother's busy figure. The dream finally ended. Mom is gone. After Sarah went home, Stella moved into the Sterling house openly. Julian said he wanted milk. To show off her motherly style in front of Ethan, she volunteered to prepare it. As soon as she opened the refrigerator, her eyes were drawn to the boxes of handmade dumplings, and she took them out. Beef filling, 3 delicacy filling, lamb filling, exactly what she loved. She was a bit hungry anyway, so she handed them to the chef to boil. The chef looked at her with a troubled expression. "Miss Vane, Sarah's mother made these for her. Before she left, she strictly instructed that no one else touch them. I'll make you fresh ones." Hearing this, Stella wanted to eat them even more, but the chef refused, so she called Ethan over. After hearing the story, Julian spoke up first, saying he agreed. Ethan then nodded along. The boxes of dumplings were thrown into boiling water. They puffed up, floated, were scooped out, and sent into Stella's stomach. Taking a break, Ethan checked the time, thinking Sarah should have arrived home and started getting busy. He wasn't actually on a business trip. He had lied to her yesterday. After all, he had never liked his mother-in-law, so naturally, he wouldn't make the trip. If her mother hadn't relied on that life-saving favor to cling to the Sterling family back then, he wouldn't have been forced into a shotgun marriage. It was a pity that everything was set in stone. He couldn't change anything. Stella and Julian, happily sharing the food, saw him sitting alone and called him over. He composed himself, smiled, and stood up. From the day she received the bad news to the 7 days back at the Sterling house, Sarah had barely eaten or drunk anything, only having a little thin porridge. As soon as she returned home, the strength she had forced herself to maintain collapsed, and her stomach seized with cramping pain. Remembering there were dumplings left by her mother, she endured the pain and walked to the refrigerator. Opening the door, she saw the boxes that held the dumplings were empty, leaving only scattered flour grains. She froze in place. The chef walked up hesitantly and whispered the fate of the dumplings. "Madam, the day after you left, Miss Vane came over and playfully insisted on eating the dumplings. We said they were yours, but Mr. Sterling and the young master wouldn't listen and insisted we cook them." The very last remnant for remembrance was cut off in those few sentences. Sarah hugged her shoulders and slowly squatted down. A deep, powerless sense of collapse slowly crept over her heart. It seemed the whole world had abandoned her. Tears surged out like a bursting dam. Desperate wails echoed through the room, making the air freeze with grief. Ethan arrived home half an hour later. Seeing her crying so tragically, he instinctively walked over and asked what was wrong, only to receive a hoarse, exhausted scream from her. "The last memory my mother left me was eaten by my husband and child just to please Stella. You ask me what's wrong." Hearing this accusation, Ethan's face didn't look good either. "It's just a few boxes of handmade dumplings. Is it worth making such a scene? If you really care, I'll just buy a crate of frozen ones to compensate you." Just a few boxes? Buy a crate to compensate, lightly dismissing the fault completely. Sarah found it incredibly laughable. She raised her red, teary eyes, her tone filled with the resolve of a fish dying as the net breaks. "You've bullied me for so many years, and I've endured it all. But I will never let you bully my mother. Ethan Sterling, let's get a divorce." Ethan had never expected to hear the word divorce from her mouth. His eyes were full of shock. "For such a small thing, you want a divorce?" Sarah looked at him, word by word, firm and clear. "Yes, I want a divorce from today on. I don't want you or the child anymore." Silence reigned in the room for an unknown amount of time. Seeing that Sarah had absolutely no intention of taking back her words, Ethan, who hadn't liked her to begin with, finally nodded and spoke in a deep voice. "Since you want a divorce, then let's divorce." With that, he turned and left the house without looking back. Watching his retreating figure with no lingering attachment, Sarah braced herself against the counter, drank a cup of hot water, then turned to go upstairs and pack her luggage. For the next 3 days, the two didn't see each other except to handle procedures at the Civil Affairs Bureau. After getting the divorce certificate, Sarah turned to leave without a word. Ethan called out to her. "Julian already knows about the divorce. Do you want to see him before you go?" Sarah's steps paused for a moment, her voice holding only indifference. "No need." The high-speed train home was in 2 hours. She didn't want to linger any longer and hailed a taxi as soon as she walked out. Watching her disappear from his sight step by step, Ethan felt a mix of emotions. He lowered his gaze, stopped looking at her, and turned to get in the car to return to the company. The company had been extremely busy over the last few days, and he didn't have time to take care of Julian, so he left him with the nanny. But just after finishing a meeting, he got a call from home saying the young master had eaten something wrong and was in the hospital. He had to drop his work and rush over. Looking at his son on the hospital bed, his face flushed red with fever and covered in rashes, Ethan's brows furrowed tightly. "You're the patient's father, right? What are your child's allergens?" Hearing the doctor's question, Ethan looked blank. This had never happened in all these years. He didn't even know the child had allergies, let alone what the allergens were. Seeing his clueless expression, the doctor's tone became exasperated. "His allergic reaction is so severe, yet you know nothing? As a father, how can you care so little about your child? Call the mother." Ethan could only hurriedly contact Sarah. After the call connected, she was silent for a few seconds before clearly listing the allergens. "It's mainly food-borne allergies. Tree nuts cause severe reactions. Peanuts, soy, and milk cause mild symptoms. Drug allergies are mainly penicillin." Listening to the series of allergens she listed, Ethan realized for the first time how fragile his son's body was. For him to grow up healthy and safe over these 5 years, Sarah must have been watching him constantly. Wouldn't that have taken a tremendous amount of effort and time? While he was lost in thought, the doctor took notes and asked a crucial question. "How long until the mother can get here?" Sarah's voice was very hoarse and tired, yet carried a sense of release. "We're divorced. I'm not coming." Ethan, standing nearby, froze when he heard this. He couldn't fathom she would speak like that, Before, didn't she wish she could revolve around her son 24 hours a day? Why was her attitude so cold this time? After hanging up, Sarah got into a taxi heading home. It was the evening rush hour, and there was a traffic jam. It was sunset by the time she reached the entrance of the alley. From a distance, the white funeral couplets pasted on the door still hung high, fluttering in the wind. Looking at the tightly closed door, her eyes reddened again, and she walked inward with heavy steps. Just as she reached the door, a 5-year-old girl suddenly rushed over, hugged her leg tightly, and crisply shouted, "Mommy!" Sarah, eyes blurry with tears, froze instantly. She looked down, then looked around, her face full of confusion. Mrs. Lynn from next door, who was collecting laundry on the balcony, leaned out and explained the situation. "This child's name is Daisy. She's the granddaughter of Old Man Tao at the end of the alley. Her family all died in a car accident, leaving only this little girl. None of the close relatives wanted to adopt her, so she was sent to the orphanage. This kid is sharp. She's often sneaked out of the orphanage in the last 6 months to wander around the alley. Sarah, you do look a bit like her mother around the eyes. She probably mistook you for her mom." Hearing such a tragic story while grieving, Sarah felt even more sorrowful. She handed a bag of candy she bought before getting in the car to Daisy, bent down, and spoke softly to her. "Daisy, you've made a mistake. I'm not your mommy. You can call me Auntie Sarah." Daisy's eyes welled up with misty tears, and she let go dejectedly. Sarah patted her head, took out her keys, and opened the door to go in, only to see Daisy following her. Thinking it wasn't safe for a little girl to be outside, she didn't stop her and carried her luggage up to the second floor. Daisy followed closely behind her, staring at her intently. Whenever Sarah turned around, Daisy would call out "Mommy" in a pitiful tone, softening Sarah's heart. The two stayed together for 2 hours. Sarah kept checking outside to see if anyone from the orphanage had come, but by dark, no one had come to pick Daisy up. She squatted down and asked Daisy why no one came. Daisy blinked and said softly that the aunties at the orphanage were very busy and didn't care about her anymore. Seeing the mud stains on her white clothes and her matted hair, Sarah knew she wasn't lying. Looking at the empty, lifeless house, she suddenly felt that having such a little girl around was actually quite nice. After all, with her mom gone, she was all alone. Having someone with her was a comfort. Thinking this, she kept Daisy at home, gave her a bath, and changed her into clean clothes. For the next day or two, still no one from the orphanage came, and Daisy stuck to her like glue. The two grew closer. When Sarah made the bed, Daisy actively held down the sheets. When Sarah carried old clothes downstairs, Daisy opened the door. When Sarah went shopping, Daisy rushed to take the plastic bags. Gradually, Sarah felt compassion and wanted to adopt Daisy. After staying in the hospital for a week, Julian was finally discharged. Looking at the long list of precautions issued by the doctor, Ethan didn't dare let the nanny take over again and decided to personally attend to the child's daily life. Just as dawn broke, Julian came in and shook his father awake, saying he had an early class. Ethan, who had only slept for 3 or 4 hours, had to get up. After the early class came piano and horse riding. Just as they managed a rushed lunch and were about to rest, the nanny said the afternoon swimming and fencing lessons were about to start. He had to drag his exhausted body to carry his son into the car. Just after dark, when he thought he could rest, Julian said he needed help with homework in the evening. When his son finally slept, his secretary called to coordinate work progress, and the nanny was reciting Julian's schedule for tomorrow. Ethan was exhausted. After hanging up the phone, he finally couldn't help asking an important question. "Julian has so many classes every day, running around from dawn till dusk. How was this coordinated before?" The nanny lowered her head and explained honestly. "Before, the madam worried about everything. Although there are many servants at home, she personally handled everything involving you and the young master. You pay attention to details, and the young master has germophobia and allergies. The madam would list many schedules and precautions every day so that there was no chaos at home." Hearing these words, a look of surprise appeared on Ethan's face. He asked the nanny to bring the schedule Sarah used to make. The thick notebook was densely written, covering everything from food, clothing, housing, and transportation to time management. Even small things like garden pruning were recorded. Once the mistress left, the nanny's workload instantly multiplied. Under the heavy pressure, she rambled on about Sarah's virtues. The madam really loved you and the young master. The clothes at home were all ironed by the madam personally. Your study and bedroom were cleaned and cared for by her. The young master is a picky eater. The food he ate was made by the madam. We couldn't even intervene. Ethan gripped the schedule book. He only felt his heart grow slightly hot. He never knew she had given so much. Meanwhile, Sarah ran around the orphanage, but in the end, the staff gave the verdict that as a single woman, she did not meet the requirements and could not adopt. A whole day of anticipation came to nothing. She was disappointed but had no choice. Sighing, she walked home, ready to explain the situation to Daisy properly. But as soon as she reached the alley entrance, she saw Daisy surrounded in a corner by several children, arguing loudly. Words like unwanted and wild child assaulted her ears. Her anger rose, and she quickly stepped forward to chase the kids away. Seeing the braids she had just tied in the morning pulled loose, Sarah felt both distressed and helpless. She led Daisy into the small courtyard. Seeing Sarah wasn't happy, Daisy immediately made a funny face to amuse her and actively comforted her. "Mommy, they were just joking with me just now. Don't take it seriously. Don't be sad, okay?" A child who had seen her family destroyed and faced cold stares at 5 years old could be so sensible. Sarah felt her nose sting, and hot tears welled up in her eyes. The explanation she had thought of all the way home stuck in her throat, unspoken. That night, holding the sleeping Daisy, she couldn't sleep for a long time, thinking about how to adopt legally. At dawn, a bold and fearless thought suddenly popped into her mind. If I find someone to marry, I should be able to adopt. Once this thought arose, it burned like a wildfire in spring, taking root in her heart. So, the next afternoon, she told her close relatives and neighbors about this idea and asked them to introduce potential partners. Everyone pitied her situation and enthusiastically agreed to contact her if there was anyone suitable. Over the next half-month, she met with a dozen blind dates, ranging from young men in their 20s to middle-aged men in their 30s and 40s. But as soon as she mentioned she had a baggage daughter, they were unhappy and nothing came of it. Gradually, Sarah became disheartened, but looking at Daisy's happy face, she encouraged herself to persist a little longer. Another week passed. Mrs. Wang introduced a man about her age, saying he had just finished his PhD. Since his parents were in poor health, he had taken a civil service job in the county town. Just hearing these conditions, Sarah wanted to back out, but Mrs. Wang said the man was very satisfied after seeing her photo and urged her to try. Thinking that one more meeting meant one more chance, she dressed up carefully and went to the appointment. They met at a lakeside restaurant. From a distance, she saw the refined man at the table, her heart thumping. The man also saw her. He quickly stood up to pull out the chair for her and politely extended his hand to introduce himself. "Is this Miss Sarah Miller?" "Hello, my name is Gabriel Wright." Sarah quickly returned the greeting. After they sat down and ordered, since both had attended university in the capital, Gabriel naturally brought up their college days. 4 years of university were indeed rare happy times in Sarah's life, so discussing this topic quickly relaxed her. The two hit it off immediately, and 3 or 4 hours passed in the blink of an eye. When parting, Sarah was still enjoying the conversation. Then she saw Gabriel hand over a Barbie doll set. "I heard Daisy is only 5 this year. I didn't know what gifts children like, but the clerk said little girls like Barbie dolls, so I bought one. If Daisy doesn't like it, please tell me, and next time I'll bring what she likes." Seeing the gift-wrapped doll box, Sarah was stunned, her opinion of him rising sharply. After hearing his words, her heart beat rapidly again. Did he just ask for a next time? It was more than a month later that Stella heard the news that Sarah and Ethan had divorced. After a trip abroad, the problem that had troubled her suddenly solved itself. She was incredibly smug and went to find Ethan immediately. The two bumped into each other at the door. She smoothly linked her arm through his and asked him to go to an art exhibition that evening. Ethan, running around between home and the company, was overwhelmed and didn't have time to refuse her directly. Seeing his exhausted look, Stella wanted to show off her good wife and mother side again. She told him to go to work with peace of mind and took on the burden of caring for Julian. In recent months, Ethan had seen Stella's kindness to his son. Seeing her eager appearance, he thought of the evening meeting and agreed, then turned back to the company. Without Sarah, Stella felt the position of Mrs. Sterling was hers for the taking. She walked into the Sterling house with a swagger. Julian hadn't seen her for over a month. As soon as he saw her, he clung to her. But she didn't coax him or play with him like before. She sent him back to the study under the pretext of doing homework. Then, she called a dozen friends over, ordered the chef to make dozens of dishes, dug out famous wines from the cellar, and started a party right in the Sterling house. After a few drinks, the group of women played loud music, danced, and had pillow fights. Upstairs and downstairs were in chaos. There was no peace. Several of Stella's close friends took a liking to the antique ornaments in the display cabinet. Drunk, they said they liked them, and Stella waved her hand, giving them away. When the servants tried to stop her, she put on the airs of the mistress and scolded them with a cold face. "I'm about to marry in and become your new master. Can't you read the situation? You dare try to control me." Disturbed and unable to find peace, Julian pushed the door open and came out, instantly seeing Stella scolding people. Seeing her looking nothing like her usual gentle self, his face scrunched up. He stepped forward and tugged at her sleeve. "Auntie Stella, it's too loud. Can you make them leave? I don't like so many strangers making noise in my house." Stella couldn't listen to a child. She raised an eyebrow, snatched the dress he had wrinkled with his grip, and winked at the nanny. "Why are you staring? Didn't Julian say the house is noisy? Hurry up and carry him to the basement. It's quiet there." This sentence made Julian's eyes widen in anger. Just as he was about to say he would tell his dad, the nanny picked him up and carried him downstairs. Without obstruction, the group partied even harder, not dispersing until after 11 o'clock p.m. After sending her friends away, Stella was in high spirits. On a whim, wanting to make her presence felt with Ethan, she ordered the chef to boil ginseng soup and carried it with her. Before leaving, she didn't forget to warn the servants. "Keep your mouths shut about tonight's events, or look for your next job and wait to be fired." After reading the last contract, Ethan rubbed his tired eyes. Just as he planned to take a nap, his assistant brought Stella in directly. Seeing her come over in the middle of the night, his brow, which had just relaxed, furrowed again. "What are you doing here? Where is Julian?" Stella twisted her waist and leaned in, placing the soup in front of him with a smug look begging for praise. "Julian was so good today. He finished his homework, I ate with him and played blocks and puzzles with him for a while. He was incredibly happy." Ethan didn't care what they did today. He asked softly, "Where is he now? Did he come with you? Is he in the car?" While opening the thermos lid, Stella answered in a nonchalant tone. "It's so late, he's probably asleep, right? Otherwise, how would I have time to come see you?" Ethan's expression changed slightly. He stood up abruptly, his tone serious. "You let him sleep alone? You didn't have the nanny watch him?" Stella didn't understand why he had such a big reaction and put on an innocent face. "He's not a baby anymore. What's wrong with sleeping alone?" Ethan's face instantly turned incredibly ugly. He took out his phone and opened the surveillance feed. "Didn't I tell you Julian sleepwalks? How dare you let him sleep alone?" In the video, Julian had gotten out of bed and was walking straight toward the open window. Ethan's heart pounded wildly. He called the butler to go check while pushing Stella aside and rushing out the door. He ran 6 or 7 red lights before reaching home. The butler was waiting at the door early, saying he got there in time and the young master hadn't fallen out of the window, but he had suffered a fright and was running a fever and having nightmares. Why would he be frightened for no reason? Ethan's face darkened instantly. Since the servants had been threatened by Stella and dared not speak out, he opened the surveillance recordings again. Everything that happened today had been recorded completely. Watching the chaotic scenes on his phone, Ethan smashed the wine bottles on the table that hadn't been cleared away. Seeing this, the nanny, who had suffered anger all night, plucked up the courage to speak. "When the madam was here, everything prioritized you and the young master, sir. How could chaos like today occur?" The madam wiped the multi-million-dollar antiques with care, but Miss Vane gave them away just like that. The villa was so noisy that the Zai family next door came to ask if something was wrong. When the madam managed the house, we never had complaints. Not to mention, the young master was scolded and bullied all night and even got hurt. He keeps calling mommy, mommy pitifully. "Sir, for the sake of the young master, why don't you call the madam and ask her to come back?" Ethan neither agreed nor disagreed. Judging by his expression, he seemed to tacitly permit it. The nanny pressed the call button. Once connected, the servants exaggerated the situation, saying the young master had almost fallen to his death, begging her to come back quickly. On the other end of the line, Sarah had no reaction at all. She gave a cold "oh" and said nothing more. Sarah, who used to be nervous if Julian even grazed his skin, was now so calm. This shocked everyone in the hall. Seeing Ethan's face growing darker, the butler, in his desperation, grabbed the phone and pleaded, "Madam, please come back. The young master keeps crying to see you. With you gone, the house is in chaos." Chaos? It was one of the top wealthy families in the capital. How messy could it get? Sarah didn't care about other people's business. She spoke indifferently. "I'm already divorced. Don't contact me about family matters anymore. Julian is about to have a new mother anyway. Let him go find Stella." With that, she hung up without caring about the reaction on the other side. She turned the page of the picture book and continued telling the bedtime story. Daisy looked at the bunny family in the book, then at Sarah's face. Blinking her big eyes, she asked with concern, "Mommy, did something happen to my little brother?" Sarah knew she was precocious and didn't want her to worry about these things. She brushed it off lightly. "He had a nightmare, it's nothing." Daisy touched Sarah's hand, her voice sweet. "Then I'll listen to more stories and tell them to my brother later. He'll only have good dreams, and then Mommy won't worry." Watching her act like a little adult with such childish sincerity, Sarah couldn't help but pull her into her arms, a faint smile on her face. "No need. From the moment I recognized you as my own daughter, my only child is you. The others are outsiders, no need to worry." Just as she finished speaking, the phone rang again. She picked it up and saw the name Gabriel Wright. She answered quickly. "Sarah, I heard from a colleague that the children's park in the west of the city opens this weekend. Let me take you two to play. Daisy will love it." Over the past half-month, the two of them had taken Daisy out for several meals and movies. Their contact had never ceased. Hearing him care so much about Daisy, the smile on Sarah's face grew deeper, and she agreed softly. After saying goodnight, she told Daisy. The little girl was so happy she spun around on the bed, saying she would wake up early to buy small cakes from the alley for Uncle Gabriel. Seeing her so happy she lost her bearings, Sarah smiled and stroked her head. "The little sleepyhead isn't sleeping in. Do you like Uncle Gabriel that much?" Daisy nodded heavily, a shy expression on her face. "Daisy likes Mommy best, and Uncle Gabriel second. If he could be my daddy, that would be great." Although children speak without inhibition, Sarah was still startled by these words and sat in a daze for a long time. After Sarah left the Sterling house, Julian didn't have a single peaceful day. He was a picky eater. The meals made by the servants didn't suit his taste. He frowned and couldn't finish a bowl of rice all day. Without bedtime stories at night, he couldn't sleep for a long time. Although Daddy was by his side, his eyes and hands were always busy with work on his phone and computer. He had no time to play with him. Auntie Stella, who used to treat him the best, ignored him. She didn't visit once in a month, and when she finally did, she cast him aside. After that noisy night, he slowly realized that Auntie Stella only liked Daddy. Being nice to him was just a show for Daddy. Now that Mommy was gone, she didn't care about him at all. After running a fever all night, Julian couldn't rest the next day because he had an afternoon English class. In his daze, he tripped and scraped a patch of skin off his hand. To save time, the nanny hastily disinfected it, put on a band-aid, and carried him into the car. He stared out the window with a drooping face. He saw the neighbor's kid, Zai, fall down. Just as he was about to laugh, Mrs. Zai rushed up, picked the kid up, started comforting him, and gently blew on the wound. The smile at the corner of Julian's mouth was instantly replaced by grievance. He raised his still painful hand and puckered his lips. When Mommy was here, she carried him downstairs. If he had a fever, he didn't have to go to class, and she would make delicious lotus seed soup to comfort him. All afternoon, scenes of Mommy treating him well played in his mind. He didn't absorb a single thing in class. When he returned, the routine interrogation naturally resulted in him knowing nothing. Seeing Daddy about to get angry, he quickly extended his injured hand, showing a sad expression. "I didn't mean to not listen. I just missed Mommy too much. Daddy, can you call Mommy back tomorrow?" Listening to his son's grievance-filled complaint, Ethan's expression shifted slightly. His lips pressed into a tight line, and he remained silent for a long while before speaking. She won't come back. Although his words were final, his mind was in turmoil. His hand, about to sign a contract, involuntarily wrote the name Sarah Miller. Julian didn't believe his father at all. He looked up, his face full of stubbornness. "No, Daddy, Mommy likes me the best. She definitely wouldn't leave us alone. If you just text her, she'll come back tomorrow." Seeing his father make no move, Julian got a bit angry. He stood on his tiptoes, took his father's phone, snapped a picture of his wound, found his mother's WeChat familiarly, and sent it directly. Half an hour passed, but there was no reply in the chat box. Ethan stared at him fixedly. Unable to save face, Ethan threw down the phone and ran back to his room. The next night, Julian picked up the phone again and sent a selfie of himself. Still no response. When the photo sent on the fourth day received a blank response, he thought about how much Mommy used to like him and persisted in sending photos. Every time the phone notified him, he ran over excitedly to check, only to return disappointed. Ethan remained impassive, letting his son continue sending photos, though he would occasionally check them himself. After the photo on the sixth day, a message finally came back from the other side, but reading it made Ethan's face collapse instantly. "The custody is yours, he is your son. Don't send me his photos in the future." There were only about 20 words. Julian recognized most of them. He read it once and tears fell pitter-patter. His eyes were full of disbelief. Is this really Mommy's WeChat? Is she saying she doesn't want me? Daddy, say something. Ethan's face was dark enough to drip water. He couldn't say a word. Julian, who had learned to read people's expressions from a young age, broke down instantly. He threw himself into Ethan's arms and cried loudly. "I want to find Mommy. Where is Mommy? I want to transfer schools there tomorrow." As soon as the water park in the small county town opened, it attracted almost half the kids in the city. It was crowded everywhere. To protect the mother and daughter, Gabriel held Daisy in one arm and protected Sarah with the other as they moved toward less crowded areas. Daisy was half a head taller than the crowd. She spotted a tall water slide in the distance, and her eyes lit up immediately. "Mommy, I want to go on the slide too." Before Sarah could speak, Gabriel led the big one and the little one toward it, squeezing through the crowd and using his height advantage to grab a ticket. The staff measured Daisy. Because she wasn't tall enough, she required family accompaniment. So Sarah went up with her. They had just slid halfway down when the machine below suddenly malfunctioned and the channel was closed. But water kept pouring down into the slide from the source. The children and adults trapped inside faced the mortal danger of drowning. Everyone around screamed, and the scene turned into chaos. Gabriel, waiting on the side, was so anxious his veins popped out. Seeing the staff hesitating, he vaulted the fence and rushed into the slide. Fortunately, Sarah and Daisy were the last to depart and were stuck in the middle. The water had just reached their chests. Gabriel quickly lifted Daisy above his head and reached up to pull the sluice gate overhead, trying to drain the water out. The sharp iron sheet cut his hand, making it bloody, but he refused to let go. He forced the gate open before the water could submerge their heads. 2 minutes later, the water flow overhead finally stopped. The malfunction below was fixed, and the channel reopened. Only then did the three land safely. Gabriel's white shirt was stained all over with fresh blood. It looked terrifying. Daisy was scared out of her wits and hugged his leg, crying loudly. "Uncle Gabriel, you aren't allowed to die. I still want you to be my daddy." Hearing her cry out of breath while saying these words, looks of embarrassment appeared on both adults' faces. The smile at the corner of Gabriel's mouth was shy and bashful, but his eyes were bright, seeming to hope the little girl's words would come true. Sarah looked up and saw his expression. Seeming to sense something, her heart moved. But since everything was chaotic, she couldn't speak then. She waited until his wound was bandaged, and on the way back, she tentatively voiced her thoughts. "Gabriel, you should know that Daisy and I aren't biologically related. The reason I want to get married is also to be able to adopt her, so..." Halfway through, she didn't know how to continue. But Gabriel naturally finished her sentence. "So let's get married. As soon as we get the marriage certificate, Daisy can rightfully call you Mommy." Hearing him say these words so calmly, Sarah felt her little scheme had been seen through, and she started stuttering. "I also know your conditions are very good. Actually, I don't care much about weddings, romance, or dowries. I just want to give Daisy a home. I only ask you to help me with this favor. Later, if you meet someone you like, we can divorce." After spending this time together, Gabriel had not only grown fond of the cute Daisy, but had also fallen in love with Sarah at first sight. He also knew it hadn't been easy for the mother and daughter to come this far. He was willing to help them with this favor, and he sincerely wanted to marry Sarah. But he knew feelings had to be nurtured slowly and couldn't be rushed. He didn't want to scare her, so he hid his true thoughts and just said it was to help. Feelings can't be rushed anyway. We'll talk about other things later. Let's get the certificate first to give Daisy a home. In the future, if you feel I'm not good enough and want a divorce, that's fine too. The day Julian said he wanted to transfer, Ethan called his assistant directly to handle the transfer procedures. 3 or 4 days later, the assistant said the paperwork was done. Without stopping, Ethan flew over with the child. As soon as he landed, he messaged Sarah asking for her address, wanting to go find her. Sarah didn't know why he suddenly asked about this. But thinking she was about to get married and start a new life, she really didn't want any connection with her ex-husband. So she directly blocked and deleted all his contact information. Seeing the calls that wouldn't go through and the messages that bounced back, Ethan was furious. A bad premonition slowly rose in his heart. This county town wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. Being unfamiliar with the place, finding her would be difficult, so he called his assistant directly. "Find out Sarah's address, then bring over the blue sapphire jewelry said I won at Sotheby's a while back." The assistant was very curious hearing he wanted that set. "Mr. Sterling, isn't that the birthday gift you prepared for Miss Vane? Are you sure you want to send it to Riverton?" Ethan now frowned instinctively whenever he heard the name Stella. His tone became impatient. "Cut the crap. Just bring it over." Sarah and Gabriel planned to take Daisy to visit the two elders after getting their certificate on Friday. So, for the past few days, she had been busy preparing gifts for the visit. She was still checking the numbers when the kindergarten teacher suddenly called. "Hello, is this Daisy's mom? Are you free now? Daisy got into a fight with another child. Is it convenient for you to come over?" Daisy, fighting. Putting these two words together felt like a fantasy to Sarah. She couldn't help but repeat it. "Daisy fought? Are you sure it's Daisy? What was it about?" "A new student transferred to the kindergarten today. I sat him at the same table as Daisy." At first, the two were fine, but suddenly they started arguing over something. Actually, Daisy didn't do or say anything. It was the boy named Julian Sterling who suddenly got angry over a photo and pushed Daisy. She hit the table and there's a bruise on her leg. New transfer, Julian, photo. Connecting this with Ethan constantly asking for her address yesterday, Sarah seemed to guess something. But hearing the teacher say Daisy was hurt, she couldn't care about anything else. She grabbed her bag and rushed to the school, worrying all the way about whether the injury was serious. Pushing open the office door, Sarah saw Ethan at a glance. He was shaking hands with the teacher. His face didn't look good, but he maintained basic politeness. "Hello, I'm Julian Sterling's father. I heard he fought today because of a photo." Miss Baker nodded and showed him the photo that had been inside Daisy's book. Ethan recognized Sarah in the photo immediately. He bent down to look at Daisy, his face becoming dark and deep. "The person in the photo is my ex-wife. You say she is your mother?" Daisy nodded. Julian, who was indignant, turned his head and saw Sarah. He quickly let go of Ethan's hand and trotted over, shouting "Mommy" loudly, his tone full of joy. Sarah didn't catch him like usual. Instead, she pushed him away indifferently, said, "You've mistaken me for someone else," and walked quickly past him, picking Daisy up in one motion. Then she raised her head, met that gaze as sharp as a blade, nodded slightly, her face devoid of any extra expression. "Hello, I am Daisy's mother." In Ethan's view, Sarah's words carried absolutely no conviction. He looked at the two faces. Compared side by side, they bore no resemblance. His face was full of suspicion. "Your daughter's surname is right, also 5 years old." Sarah looked at the large bruise on her daughter's calf, her mood instantly becoming heavy. She had no desire to entertain Ethan's interrogation. She just wanted to settle this quickly and take Daisy back. "You don't need to worry about that. Today we are discussing the fact that your son pushed my daughter. Now that my daughter is injured, don't you even have a word of apology?" Her stern, questioning tone made Julian, who looked aggrieved, extremely uneasy. He stepped forward to pull her wrist, his tone carrying a pleasing note. "Mommy, you are my mommy, not hers. Don't you recognize Jules?" Seeing his hand about to grab Daisy's foot, Sarah brushed his hand away directly and took 2 steps back. Watching her cold action, Ethan's heart stalled. He looked at her in disbelief. "Are you this cruel? You don't even want your son anymore." Sarah felt the father and son were being unreasonable. She turned to look at Miss Baker and reiterated her wishes. "Miss Baker, what's done is done. I think the other student and parent should apologize to Daisy." Miss Baker, who hadn't figured out the situation, finally reacted. She quickly pulled the topic back to the dispute between the 2 children. "Julian's dad, although I don't know what story exists between your 2 families, please resolve it privately. I called you here today because Julian accidentally hurt Daisy. I believe you've seen the injury on her leg. Although the children are small, they are almost school age. I think you should prioritize moral education. So please take Julian and apologize to Daisy." After the teacher intervened, although Ethan was reluctant, he still took Julian to bow and apologize to Daisy. Sarah didn't want to blow this out of proportion and intended to let it go. She held Daisy and prepared to leave. But just as she left the office, Ethan blocked her path with his son, insisting she clarify things. Sarah didn't have much patience and spoke very bluntly. "We are already divorced. Now we are just strangers. I have no obligation to explain anything to you, do I?" Ethan choked on his words, the anger in his heart burning hotter. His face looked terrible. "I'm a stranger to you, but what about Julian? He is your biological son. He deserves to know why he suddenly has a sister, doesn't he?" Facing his aggressive questioning, Sarah still had no desire to explain. "Custody is yours. I haven't missed a cent of child support transfer. I consider my conscience clear. There is no need to explain my private life in detail." With that, Sarah didn't look at the father and son's faces. Protecting Daisy, she squeezed past through the corner. Seeing his mother disappear before his eyes, Julian was terrified and burst into loud tears on the spot. Ethan quickly picked up his son to comfort him, his thin lips pressed tight, his deep gaze locked on Sarah. The child's crying echoed through the school building, but from beginning to end, she never looked back. Not even once. After returning home, while Sarah boiled eggs, she asked Daisy about what happened during the day. Daisy, sitting obediently on a chair, drank a glass of water with a gulping sound before slowly explaining the sequence of events. It turned out she had found an ID photo of Sarah on the table 2 days ago and put it in the compartment of her pencil case. Today, her new deskmate, Julian, accidentally saw the photo while borrowing an eraser. He asked about it, and after she said it was her mother, he suddenly flew into a rage and got physical. Just then, Miss Baker entered the classroom and called them to the office. Originally, an apology would have ended it, but he refused to say sorry and kept wiping his tears, muttering, "She is my mother." Miss Baker had no choice but to call both parents. It hasn't been that long. How did Julian become so violent? Getting physical over such a small thing? Is this how Ethan teaches children? Complex emotions welled up in Sarah's heart. Seeing this, Daisy bit her lip, clutched the corner of her shirt with her small hand, and asked timidly, "Mommy, is Julian my little brother? They came to find you. Are you going to leave with them? Will you take Daisy with you?" Hearing this somewhat downcast voice, Sarah finally pulled herself out of her chaotic thoughts. Looking at Daisy's fearful face, she knew the child was probably remembering past events and felt traumatized. Infinite distress rose in her heart, and she quickly hugged Daisy. "Mommy isn't going anywhere. I'll stay right by Daisy's side. Tomorrow Mommy is marrying Uncle Gabriel. In a little while, Mommy can take you home." Daisy's eyes instantly filled with surprise and anticipation. A bright smile returned to her lips. "How long do I have to wait?" 3 months. As soon as Uncle's 30th birthday arrives, Gabriel, who had rushed over hearing Daisy was injured, happened to hear this as he walked in carrying a bag of medicine. He asked curiously, "What about my birthday? Is Daisy preparing a gift for Uncle?" Seeing Gabriel arrive, Daisy quickly jumped off the chair and threw herself into his arms, her voice extremely excited. "On Uncle's birthday, I'll have a home." Gabriel picked her up and lifted her high a few times, making her giggle. Then he deliberately sighed. "Oh, so our Daisy only thinks about going home and doesn't care about Uncle's birthday at all. Uncle thought you were going to give me a surprise." Young Daisy couldn't tell he was joking. She quickly hugged his neck and kissed him, blinking her eyes, trying to melt him with cuteness. No, of course Daisy will prepare a gift for Uncle's birthday. Don't worry, Sarah watched the two of them making noise and couldn't help but smile. The negative emotions from earlier were swept away entirely. The electric pot beeped twice. The eggs were done. Just as she was about to lift the lid to fish them out, Gabriel put the child down and walked over. He gently pushed her aside, his voice smiling. "Take a break, Sarah. I'll do it, so the steam doesn't burn you." Sarah handed him the gloves, then led Daisy to sit down. She casually looked at the things he brought. The bag was filled with a large pile of medicine, ranging from cold medicine to rubbing alcohol. It made her gasp. It was just a bump. Why buy so much medicine? Gabriel walked over with a peeled egg and squatted down. While massaging Daisy's leg, he answered her. "You haven't been back long. The house must be lacking various medicines. I bought a bit of everything. Otherwise, waiting until someone is sick or hurt to buy it would delay things." Seeing how thoughtful he was, warmth rose in Sarah's heart. She looked at Daisy, who was grinning in pain but not making a sound, and quickly picked up a toy nearby to distract her. The two soon-to-be spouses looked at each other and tacitly coaxed the child together. The setting sun shone through the window lattice, reflecting a warm golden light on the three faces. A gust of wind blew, chiming the wind bells under the eaves. Ding dong, playing a warm and fitting evening song. After returning to the hotel, although Julian wasn't crying anymore, he was still muttering about Mommy. Ethan felt very vexed listening to him but couldn't lose his temper with his son. He called his assistant again. "Did you find the address? If so, investigate the little girl, Daisy, who is with the madam." The assistant acted reliably and quickly sent the address. "Is it Daisy? I understand. Mr. Sterling, I've already placed the jewelry set you requested in your room." Ethan grunted assent. Hanging up, he got up and walked into the room, spotting the huge gift box immediately. As he unwrapped the box, he searched his mind for memories with Sarah. Knowing her for 5 years, married for 5 years, he seemed never to have given her any gifts, let alone such expensive jewelry. She naturally couldn't afford it herself, so for all the occasions she attended, big or small, she used the clothes and jewelry left to her by Grandma. Since Grandma passed away 2 years ago, she seemed never to have acquired any expensive clothes. Her daily attire was always simple and plain. The old Ethan naturally wouldn't notice such minor details. But now, recalling the past, a faint guilt lingered in his heart. He felt he owed her a lot. After all, before marriage, she had constantly cared for the frail Grandma. After marriage, she maintained the household and raised the child, doing her utmost with dedication. Although he was forced to marry her, since he chose to enter the marriage, he should have shouldered the husband's responsibilities. Yet for these years, he willfully threw the burdens on his shoulders onto her, adding much load to her life. If not for this divorce storm, Ethan probably would never have realized in his life that Sarah had integrated into his world and become an indispensable part of it. Past mistakes could not be undone, but future matters could still be salvaged. Although things didn't go as he expected with the appearance of Daisy, he felt it wasn't a problem. Sarah was holding a grudge against the father and son. Using a nominal daughter to spite them was very likely. After all, this little girl was about the same age as Julian. She was probably the daughter of a neighbor or relative who had acknowledged Sarah as a godmother. Children can't distinguish between godmother and mother, so calling her wrong in the moment was possible. As long as he found an opportunity to talk everything out, she would definitely return to him and the child. A confident smile appeared on Ethan's lips, as if victory were already in his grasp. Julian, bored of shouting outside, quietly sneaked into the room after a while. He looked up at the shimmering gemstone necklace in his father's hand, his eyes shining with curiosity. "Is this for Mommy?" Ethan nodded faintly and gently placed the necklace in his hand. Julian held it and looked at it, muttering, "This necklace is prettier than any in Mommy's cabinet. Mommy will definitely like it. Daddy, let me give it to Mommy, okay?" Ethan had handed the item over precisely with this calculation. After all, he had never been close to Sarah. She likely wouldn't accept his gift. But if Julian gave it, it would be different. It was the first gift from her biological son. She would have to give it some face. As long as she accepted the item, subsequent events could unfold logically. He would apologize, the son would hug her and act spoiled, and her heart should soften enough to agree to go back with them. And this time, he wouldn't be a bystander in the marriage anymore. He would lower his stance and participate in family life, striving to fulfill the responsibilities of a husband and father. He was certain that as long as they were married, life could return to the right track and restore its former tranquility. Early Friday morning, Sarah took Daisy out. After dropping the child off at school, she saw Gabriel waiting at the gate as soon as she came out. Checking the time, it was still early. She accompanied him for some breakfast before heading to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Handling these procedures for the second time, Sarah knew the ropes. Gabriel, on the other hand, looked very nervous. Usually a gentle and modest gentleman like a spring breeze, seeing him nervous enough to fill out forms wrong inexplicably hit her funny bone. But since the marriage registration office was a solemn occasion, she couldn't laugh too wantonly and could only press her lips tightly together. Only when the photographer asked them to smile for the wedding photo did she dare release these emotions. Thus, she ended up with a marriage certificate where her eyes were smiled shut. Looking at the bright red color, Sarah couldn't help but think of the divorce certificate she had just received not long ago. She felt emotional. If she could travel back to more than a month ago and tell the Sarah whose heart was dead as ash, "You're getting married again soon," she would have thought it was a fantasy. After all, when she divorced with a dead heart, she had decided never to marry again and ask for trouble in this life. Yet she gave up a father and son who didn't care about her at all, and suddenly gained a father and daughter who revolved only around her. It was truly a twist of fate, light at the end of the tunnel. So, letting go of those unsuitable people and past events early was a very correct decision. She turned sideways to look at Gabriel, who had just been liberated from nervousness and was full of smiles. Her eyes were full of rejoicing and joy. Gabriel noticed her gaze and turned sideways too, extending his hand to her. "Daisy doesn't finish school until 4. It's still early. Let me accompany you shopping." Sarah nodded and placed her hand in his palm. The next second, two hands clasped tightly together, never to separate again. Although the two got married to adopt Daisy, only the couple knew this. Gabriel kept it even from his parents. But tonight the family of 3 was going to meet the 2 elders. Everything else could be skipped, but they had to wear a pair of wedding rings to look the part. So as soon as they left the Civil Affairs Bureau, the 2 went straight to the mall to pick out wedding rings. After looking at 4 or 5 stores, they both liked the same style and paid immediately. Sarah wanted to put it on herself, but Gabriel beat her to it, taking her ring and solemnly pulling her hand over. "Sarah, although it's a bit by accident, we are now legally husband and wife. During the marriage, I will try hard to shoulder my responsibilities and take good care of this family. Can you trust me wholeheartedly, tell me anything, and treat me as Daisy's real father?" Why does this sound a bit like wedding vows? Sarah suddenly panicked. She looked around and saw the bustling mall, which calmed her down. She gave him her answer very seriously. "I can." Gabriel looked relieved. He gently put the ring on her index finger, then placed the other ring in her palm. "Your turn to put it on me." Clearly a normal action, yet Sarah didn't dare look at him from start to finish. Sensing that expectant gaze, a blush flew onto her face. Her fingers trembled slightly as she picked up the ring and put it on him. 2 hands wearing rings clasped together again. Gabriel held her hand, his tone brisk. "Let's go eat. I booked a movie for 12:30. After watching, it'll be just right to pick up Daisy." Because it was Friday, a traffic jam formed at the kindergarten gate before 4 o'clock. Seeing that time was tight and the distance wasn't far, thinking the 2 elders were waiting, Sarah decided to walk to pick up Daisy and let Gabriel drive the car to the side gate. Daisy's classroom was the furthest inside on the 3rd floor. When Sarah rushed over, most of the children in the classroom had left. Only Daisy and Julian remained in their seats. Seeing her, the 2 children, who had been ignoring each other, ran toward her simultaneously, both calling "Mommy" in unison. Sarah caught the faster Daisy and stood up, leaving Julian, arms outstretched, standing in place. He puffed out his cheeks and glared at Daisy, who had beaten him to it. Then a pitiful expression appeared on his face. "Mommy, I want a hug too." Sarah didn't want to talk to a child of this age about divorce or custody, so she found a casual excuse. "I can't carry both." Daisy was injured when you pushed her, so I have to carry her. Her tone wasn't very good. Julian could feel Mommy was probably angry. He looked at the bruise on Daisy's leg, guilt appearing on his face. He bowed his head honestly to apologize. I'm sorry, Mommy. I shouldn't have pushed Daisy. I won't hurt her ever again. In 5 years, this was the first time Sarah had seen such an obedient Julian. A flash of surprise passed through her eyes. Thinking they were desk mates and would have to interact for a while longer, if he stayed obedient and treated Daisy well, it would be good. Sarah reluctantly replied with, "Make sure you do as you say." Julian nodded repeatedly, a smile blossoming on his face again. Then he took the necklace out of his school bag and offered it like a treasure. "Mommy, this is a gift Daddy and I are giving you. Do you like it?" Sarah only glanced at it, then picked up Daisy's school bag directly and walked out. "I don't like it. No need to give me gifts. Keep it yourself." A sad expression appeared on Julian's face, but he didn't want to give up easily. He trotted to keep up. "Then, Mommy, come home with me. I'll ask Daddy to buy whatever you like, okay?" Sarah mercilessly shattered his fantasy. "I won't go home with you. I already have a new home. Daisy is my own daughter. You and your daddy go find Stella." These words landed like thunder in Julian's ears. He froze on the spot. Also freezing was Ethan, who had just reached the top of the stairs. He looked up at the mother and daughter, hugging intimately. His brow furrowed into a deep frown. This morning, his assistant messaged saying the little girl named Daisy was an orphan Sarah found the day she returned home, and they had been living together since. What did she mean by saying Daisy was her own daughter? Did she really plan to adopt this orphan? But she was single. She didn't meet the adoption conditions at all. Ethan's mind raced, and suddenly he had an idea. Since Sarah liked this little girl so much, maybe he should change his pitch. He could say that as long as she agreed to remarry, the Sterling family would be willing to adopt Daisy and take the little girl back to the capital to live together. The Sterling family had a big business. Raising one more child was no problem. Besides, Daisy was an orphan. If he adopted her, it would be a good story for the Sterling group. Either way, he wouldn't lose out. Thinking this, Ethan made up his mind. He stepped in front of Sarah, met her gaze, and spoke confidently. "If you agree to remarry, then I agree to adopt Daisy. I also promise to take her back to the capital to enjoy the same lifestyle and educational conditions as Julian." Hearing the word remarry, Sarah finally realized what he had been calculating all this time. So he wanted to call her back to continue slaving away for the family. Keep dreaming after understanding the trick, a look of amusement appeared on her face. Her eyes held deep confusion. "Who told you I want to remarry you? Ethan Sterling, have you sat in the CEO's chair so long you see everyone as a beast of burden?" Hearing her mocking tone, a nameless fire burned in Ethan's heart. He took a deep breath, suppressed his restless heart, and tried to continue negotiating. "If you don't remarry, you won't be eligible to adopt the orphan. She'll have to go back to the orphanage eventually." Before Sarah could speak, Daisy, who had been watching silently, spoke up. She made a face at Ethan and declared proudly, "HMPH, I won't go back to the orphanage, Mommy, and Uncle Gabriel will definitely take me home, Uncle Gabriel." "Who is this now?" Ethan frowned deeper. Sarah was amused by her daughter's face-making. She coughed twice and put on a serious look. "Daisy, wrong, not Uncle Gabriel. Now you have to call him Daddy." "Yes, Daddy and Mommy will take me home." Listening to the mother and daughter echoing each other, Ethan's face changed instantly. He swept a cold gaze over Daisy. "What, Daddy?" Seeing his fierce look, Sarah was afraid he would scare Daisy. She quickly switched Daisy to her right arm to block her view, freeing her left hand to wave it in front of his eyes a few times. "No need for you to worry about the adoption. I'm already married. Also, Mr. Sterling, please don't appear in front of me, your ex-wife, with your son in the future. After all, I have a family now. It's inappropriate for you to do this." Seeing the conspicuous diamond ring on her index finger, Ethan felt a boom in his brain and lost the ability to organize language. "You, married? It's been less than 2 months since the divorce." Although he didn't speak clearly, Sarah easily judged what he meant from his expression and tone. She nodded calmly. "It's just getting remarried a month and a half after divorce. It's not like I cheated during the marriage. Is there a need to be so shocked?" This airy tone was tantamount to pouring oil on the fire. The anger in Ethan's heart burned hotter. Impulsively, he grabbed her hand directly, wanting to pull that ring off. But his movement was too big. From a distance, it looked like he was going to hit someone. Julian, standing by the side, was terrified. He ran over crying and grabbed his hand. "Daddy, don't hit Mommy." Hearing this, Ethan's reason, which had temporarily departed, finally returned. But he didn't let go of Sarah's hand. He looked at her deeply and ordered in an unquestionable tone, "Take it off, then come back to the Capitol with me." Sarah's hand holding the child was struggling to shake him off. Hearing his domineering tone, a look of disbelief appeared on her face immediately. "We are already divorced. Who are you ordering around? Is your brain okay? Divorced people can remarry." Ethan said this sentence hoarsely, but just as his voice fell, a clear voice suddenly came from behind. "I'm afraid you can't remarry because Sarah and I have already registered." The 4 people in the corridor turned their heads at the sound. Daisy reacted first. She raised her hand and waved it left and right. "Daddy, you came to pick up Daisy and Mommy?" As soon as Gabriel, who had just parked the car and hurried over, heard the address Daddy, a smile blossomed at the corner of his mouth. He quickened his pace to the mother and daughter, grabbed Ethan's hand forcefully to free Sarah's hand, then shielded her behind him. He took Daisy into his arms before turning to face the father and son. "Ethan Sterling, hello. I am Sarah's husband, Gabriel Wright." Listening to his introduction, Ethan couldn't say a word. A monstrous sourness surged in his heart. Sarah didn't care what Ethan was thinking. She rubbed her red wrist and casually linked her arm through Gabriel's left arm. Her tone was relaxed and natural, no longer mocking like before. "Why did you come up? Is the car parked?" "Parked. Seeing you didn't come down for so long, I thought Daisy ate too many snacks today and you couldn't carry her, so I came up to help." Hearing this joke, Sarah smiled until her eyes curved. Daisy, however, pinched the flesh on Gabriel's face in dissatisfaction. "Daddy, what are you saying? I didn't eat any snacks today. I'm waiting to eat Grandma's ribs tonight." Watching the 3 of them chatting as if no one else was there, Ethan's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Sarah looked at the clock in the classroom and realized it was almost the agreed time. Ignoring the father and son in front of her, she pulled Gabriel toward the stairs, muttering nonstop. Oh no, what if we're late? Will it leave a bad impression on Uncle and Auntie?" "That won't happen. But the ribs Daisy likes might get cold. The little glutton will have to wait for them to be reheated." The family of 3 made noise as they slowly walked away. Julian, with a bewildered face, still didn't know what happened. But watching Mommy holding another man's hand and protecting another child, he felt his heart aching. He couldn't help letting go of his father's hand, running up and grabbing the corner of Sarah's clothes. "Mommy, where are you going? Take Jules too, okay?" Sarah gently pulled her clothes free. Her tone was soft, but the words were not gentle. "I can't. This is Mommy's family gathering, not yours. Go find your daddy." With that, the 3 held hands and went downstairs, leaving him alone looking at the empty stairwell, crying loudly. Standing in the distance, Ethan watched his son crying uncontrollably. He felt as if a coarse rope was constricting his heart. A heavy stone pressed down, making even breathing extremely difficult. He braced himself against the balcony, gasping for fresh air. From the corner of his eye, he saw the 3 people laughing and talking in the sunset. His fingers struck the rough wall, creating tiny cuts, yet he seemed not to feel the pain. He used more force until the skin on his fingers scraped up, exposing bright red flesh. The sun slowly leaned toward the western hills. The people in the school dispersed, and everywhere became quiet. The security guard patrolled floor by floor with a baton. Seeing Ethan downstairs, he waved and shouted loudly, "School is over, parent. Please take your child and go home quickly." A sentence of 20-odd words, yet Ethan only heard the 2 words "go home." His throat bobbed a few times, swallowing those unknown bitter emotions. He walked dejectedly to the stairwell, picked up his still sobbing son, and left the school. Twilight gathered, and the surroundings were bustling with people and brightly lit. Ethan sat in the back seat, silent for a long time. The driver, who had waited for nearly 2 hours, finally couldn't help it. He plucked up the courage to ask, "Mr. Sterling, where to?" Ethan opened his mouth, instinctively wanting to say home, but soon realized he was in Riverton. Where did he have a home in Riverton? Once the evening rush hour hit, the traffic jam caused them to arrive at Gabriel's parents' house more than an hour late. Being late for the first visit made Sarah's heart pound. She drank water nervously. The perceptible Gabriel quickly noticed her abnormality. He called his parents directly, blaming everything on the traffic. Only then did she slowly relax, but not completely. She started checking if all the gifts were ready. Seeing she couldn't stay idle for a moment, Gabriel smiled helplessly. He encouraged Daisy to find something to distract her. Although not biologically related, seeing each other every day lately, the father and daughter had already developed a tacit understanding. Gabriel passed a look, and Daisy politely pulled her braids loose. Then she took Sarah's hand and started acting spoiled. "Mommy, my braid is loose. Can you braid it for me? Otherwise, I won't look pretty when I see Grandpa and Grandma later." Sarah quickly put down her phone, turned sideways, held her daughter's hair, and began combing it with her fingers. Gabriel interposed appropriately. "Daisy, Grandma is very good at braiding. Ask Grandma to braid it for you as soon as you get out of the car. She will definitely be willing." Daisy looked at his hair, eyes wide, tone full of innocent curiosity. "Daddy, you have short hair. How would Grandma know how to braid? Are you tricking Daisy?" "How could I? Daddy will tell you a secret. Actually, your grandma wanted a daughter very much back then, but Daddy isn't a girl. So Grandma kept Daddy's hair long for a long time, practicing the skill of braiding all kinds of styles." Hearing this, Sarah also looked over with a surprised face. "You had long hair as a child?" Seeing Gabriel nod, she immediately photoshopped long hair onto him in her mind. But no matter how she thought about it, it was weird. Finally, she couldn't help asking, "Are there photos?" Hearing her brisk tone, Gabriel felt much more relieved. "Such precious dark history, my mom definitely took photos. Quite a few, too, at least 50 or 60. You won't even need to ask later. She'll actively bring them out for you to appreciate." Hearing his helpless yet certain tone, Sarah knew he must have been teased about this since childhood. She couldn't help laughing out loud. Although Daisy didn't know what Mommy was laughing at, seeing her so happy, she giggled along. The atmosphere in the car improved. Having achieved his goal, Gabriel looked at his parents waiting not far from the door, a smile appearing on his face too. As soon as the car stopped, the two elders supported each other and walked up, their wrinkled faces smiling like flowers. "Where is my precious darling Daisy? If you don't get out, Grandma's ribs will get cold again." Daisy, who was a bit timid at first, heard the word ribs and couldn't suppress her appetite. She opened the door and jumped into Mr. Wright's arms, greeting them obediently. "Hello, Grandpa. Hello, Grandma. I am Daisy." Daisy looked spirited and spoke and acted politely. She immediately caught the eyes of the two elders. Mrs. Wright laughed until her mouth couldn't close. She quickly took Daisy's small hand, then took out a red envelope and handed it to her. "Daisy is so good. Here, Grandpa and Grandma give you a red envelope to buy candy." Before coming, the couple had told the child to accept red envelopes if offered, so Daisy didn't refuse. She smiled, took the red envelope, and said auspicious words. "I can't bear to spend Grandpa and Grandma's red envelope on candy. I want to save it to buy a big car when I grow up and take Grandpa, Grandma, Daddy, and Mommy everywhere to play." These words made the old couple bend over with laughter. Sarah, getting out from the other side carrying bags big and small, looked at the warm scene before her and couldn't help laughing along. Mrs. Wright wiped her tears and looked up to see her son walking over holding her daughter-in-law's hand. She quickly stepped forward to take Sarah's hand, her tone kind and gentle. "Sarah is here, the old man, and I have been looking forward to you for a long time. Quick, let's go inside and chat. I heard you like tea." The old man took out his treasured gin junmei tea. "Go inside and drink it all for him, or he'll stingily take it back later." As soon as the family of 5 entered and exchanged pleasantries, Mrs. Wright indeed walked over smiling with a photo album. "Daisy, Sarah, come. I'll show you something good." Looking at the mother and daughter surrounding her, the old lady familiarly flipped to the middle, pointed to the person wearing a skirt in the center, and looked mysterious. "Guess who this little girl is?" Sarah looked down and immediately choked on the tea she had just sipped. Daisy quickly ran over to pull a few tissues. Standing on tiptoes to wipe Sarah's clothes clean, she then tilted her head to look. Seeing that familiar face and hair reaching the waist, Daisy's eyes widened larger than grapes. She ran thump-thump into the kitchen, dragged out Gabriel, who was heating up dishes, and shouted nonstop. "Daddy, why is your hair in the photo longer than mine? How could you bear to cut it?" As this childish voice came out, the people in the room instantly burst into laughter. Sarah laughed until her stomach hurt and she could barely stand. Mrs. Wright quickly hugged her. Gabriel had anticipated this situation. He fed a piece of fried pork he had just picked up into Daisy's mouth and pointed to the album. "Daisy, if you secretly throw that album away, Daddy will make fried pork for you every day, okay?" Daisy's eyes rolled around a few times. After chewing the food in her mouth, she shook her head firmly. "No way. That photo is Grandma's treasure. I am Grandma's new treasure. Treasures must protect treasures." Hearing these words from a 5-year-old Mrs. Wright looked at Sarah with a surprised expression. "Sarah, Daisy is so clever and articulate. Is it because you taught her well?" Sarah felt a bit ashamed and waved her hand humbly. "Daisy's intelligence is natural. How could I teach that?" "Oh, they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Look at how straight our Daisy grows. You, the tree, must be excellent. Originally, I was worried about Gabriel marrying in a rush, but seeing you mother and daughter, I'm truly relieved to hand him over to you." Seeing the relieved and satisfied looks on the elders' faces, Sarah felt emotional too. Regarding this hastily concluded marriage, even she, the party involved, wasn't sure. Let alone 2 elderly people in their twilight years. So her nervousness these past few days was because she worried the elders wouldn't be happy. But after meeting today, not only did they have no prejudice against her and Daisy, but they also actively found topics to bridge the distance, and even laid out their concerns openly, hiding nothing. Such a warm, generous, and kind attitude naturally infected Sarah. She couldn't help thinking of her deceased mother. When Mom was still here, she looked at her with such gentle eyes too, unconditionally supporting every decision she made. Hot tears welled up in her eyes. Not wanting to spoil everyone's mood, she turned her back and secretly wiped her tears. Sharp-eyed Mr. Wright noticed her movement. He quickly nudged his son's shoulder, his tone full of concern. "What's wrong with Sarah?" Hearing this, everyone in the room looked over. Seeing she couldn't hide it, Sarah turned around half crying, half laughing, her tone very embarrassed. "Uncle and Auntie are too good to Daisy and me. It reminds me of my mom." Gabriel had already told his parents about her family situation. Regretful expressions appeared on both elders' faces. Mrs. Wright hugged her directly, gently patting her back. "It's okay, Sarah. Although Mom went to heaven, she definitely turned into a star to accompany you every day. In the future, the old man, I, Gabriel, and Daisy will all accompany you. Mom will definitely be happy for you when she sees it." That very night, the assistant reported the full sequence of events to Ethan. "Mr. Sterling, after the madam returned to Riverton, she started blind dating. She has known Gabriel Wright for less than a month. They got their marriage certificate this afternoon." Married in less than a month? Ethan looked incredibly grave. He felt Sarah was acting recklessly. Thinking of her deciding her marriage so hastily, he couldn't sit still anymore. He rushed to her house overnight. At midnight, Gabriel, holding the sleeping Daisy, appeared in front of him holding Sarah's hand. Meeting her ex-husband again a few hours later, this time in front of her own home, Sarah instinctively paused, wanting to avoid him. But that gaze locked onto her figure tightly, with an attitude of not giving up until the goal was reached. To rest earlier, she could only explain the situation to Gabriel and ask him to carry the child inside to rest first. Gabriel looked at Ethan a few times, bent down to whisper a few words to her, and entered the house first. The somewhat dim alley quieted down instantly. Sarah kicked a pebble under her foot and yawned. "It's late. If you have something to say it quickly." Ethan rarely faced her alone like this and didn't really understand her communication habits. He could only try to adopt a gentle attitude to persuade her. "You and he have only known each other for less than a month before flash marrying. Isn't that too rash? Do you really know him?" Hearing his words, Sarah couldn't help feeling a bit surprised. The person who used to disdain even looking at her now actually investigated her movements. She crossed her arms and leaned against the wall, her tone casual. "1 month, I know what I need to know. If it fits, get married. Is there a problem? Isn't it better than marrying you who didn't know me at all?" Hearing her bring up the past, a shadow crossed Ethan's face. "You know clearly that I married you back then because of Grandma and the child." Sarah interrupted him directly without waiting for him to finish. She nodded in agreement. "Yes, I know you actually didn't want to marry me. I always knew. Now that Grandma passed away and the child has grown up and I divorced you, shouldn't you be singing and dancing for 3 days in celebration? Why run to my door to manage whether I remarry? Ethan was stumped by her question instantly. Although he knew clearly in his heart that he and the child could not live without her, having to admit this to her face was harder than killing him. So he was silent for a long time before giving an answer that didn't sound very convincing. It's Julian, he keeps talking about you. That's strange. Didn't he always want Stella to be his mom? Why has he changed his character now? Facing her confusion, Ethan still couldn't say a word. After all, if she knew what Stella had done these days, she would probably laugh out loud on the spot. So he found another excuse. You fit the position of Mrs. Sterling better than she does. Hearing this, a sarcastic expression appeared on Sarah's face. Am I some item waiting for the highest bidder? Something to be compared. Is Mrs. Sterling very noble? Isn't she just a tool revolving around you father and son? I divorced because I was tired of that life. Why would I repeat the same mistake? You better go back and find a new nanny to serve you. I can't eat your family's bitterness anymore. With that, Sarah slowly walked toward the house. Ethan, panicked by her words, quickly called out to her. I will change. Is that so? Sarah didn't look back. Stepping into the house through the lamplight, she dropped 2 powerful words. Too late. Julian had never stayed up late. So by 2:00 a.m., he was so sleepy he couldn't open his eyes. Yet he forced himself to splash cold water on his face to wake up, just to wait for Daddy to return. Hearing movement at the door, he ran over 3 steps at a time and hugged Ethan's leg. Daddy, did Mommy agree? Looking at his son's expectant face, Ethan wanted to lie to him, but felt that deceiving a 5-year-old child was a sinful thing. Although the truth was cruel, it was better than sugar-coated poison. So he decided to tell him the result exactly as it was. Your mommy won't come back with us. She won't live with us anymore in the future. Forget her. The smile on Julian's face instantly transformed into disbelief. Tears welled up in his eyes and rolled down like broken beads. His voice was shrill and hoarse. No, Mommy likes Jules best, Daddy. Did you not tell Mommy I miss her? If you knew, she would definitely agree. Facing Julian, who was nearing a breakdown, Ethan felt exhausted and had no mind to coax him anymore. He let his son cry earth-shatteringly and spoke coldly. She knows, but she just doesn't want us anymore. I'll take you back tomorrow. Don't think about her anymore. Julian shook his head desperately, his face full of resistance. I won't go back, I just want to stay by Mommy's side. Seeing his stubborn look, Ethan's already vexed heart grew more anxious. He loosened his tie. I've said it many times, your mommy won't come back. What's the use of you staying here? Do you want to stay in this small city with her forever? Don't forget you are a Sterling. Julian had never seen his father so angry. He was so scared his tears stuck in his eyes. Ethan realized his attitude was wrong after shouting. He picked him up and started reasoning with him again. Julian hung his head and listened, not answering and not crying anymore. Silence reigned in the room for a long time. Just as Ethan thought he had fallen asleep, he suddenly whispered a request in a hoarse voice. Daddy, I agree to go back with you. Can you promise to bring me to see Mommy every week? Otherwise, if I miss her every day, I won't be able to eat or sleep well. He was still a 5-year-old child after all. Ethan sighed deeply and agreed. Then he contacted his assistant to buy a house in the residential area near Sarah's home for Julian to stay in on weekends. Early the next morning, the father and son boarded the plane back to the capital. At parting, Julian stared unblinkingly at this small county town and asked Ethan a question. Daddy, will you accompany me to see Mommy in the future? Ethan was silent for a long time before giving an ambiguous answer. Maybe. Actually, he didn't know if he would come back. After all, he was born and raised in the capital. Everything was there. This was just an economically underdeveloped county town. Besides the child's mother living here, was there anything worth his nostalgia? He probably wouldn't come again. Small alleys are always liveliest at dusk. Children from every household come back from school, gathering to play hide and seek and jump rope. It was very lively. Gabriel sprinkled a spoonful of salt into the steaming pot, then glanced sideways at Sarah, who was clearing the dining table, smiling. Sarah, dinner is almost ready. Go call Daisy back. Sarah acknowledged him and walked to the second-floor balcony. At a glance, she saw Daisy lying on the ground shooting marbles. She shook her head helplessly. Daisy was going into 4th grade after the summer break. Why was she still playing with 6 or 7-year-olds? She really wanted to act the boss. Daisy had gained quite a bit of weight over these years, unlike the bamboo, thin girl from before. Thus, Sarah called out with full lung power from a distance, "Daisy, what time is it? Come back for dinner." Hearing this voice, Daisy instantly sprang up from the ground, threw the handful of marbles she just won to her little followers, and rushed past like the wind amidst the teasing of neighbors. Her voice was loud and clear. "I'm coming. What delicious food did Daddy make today? It smells so good." She slipped into the kitchen like a wisp of smoke and was about to pick up a freshly fried chicken nugget with her hand. Gabriel quickly grabbed her dirty paw and pushed her toward the bathroom. "Wash up clean before eating, or you'll get scolded by Mommy again." Sarah, who just happened to come downstairs, only heard the last sentence. Her eyebrows immediately shot up. "I scolded what? Daddy said you're fierce and like scolding people." Daisy, washing her hands, blinked her eyes and deliberately stirred up trouble as soon as she opened her mouth. How could Sarah not see she was lying? She took a wet towel and wiped Daisy's dusty face, pointing her finger at Gabriel on the side. "Little girl learns to talk nonsense. It's all because you spoil her." Gabriel, attacked from both sides, didn't dare say a word. He took small steps and slipped into the kitchen to serve the dishes. Seeing Dad leave, Daisy leaned close to Mom and whispered, "Mommy, did they come again?" Seeing her acting like a thief, Sarah tapped her forehead. "Just ask directly about small things. Why sneak around behind your dad's back?" Daisy touched her nose, looking mysterious. "I'm afraid Daddy will get jealous. Your dad and I are an old married couple." "Jealous? Jealous? Where is all this vinegar to drink?" Little girl learns a word and uses it randomly. Hearing these words from a 10-year-old child, Sarah just found it funny. She pulled the clean Daisy toward the dining room. The family of 3 ate dinner boisterously. The couple who agreed back, then to divorce if it didn't work out, had walked hand in hand for 4 years. Daisy had gradually grown up, reaching Sarah's shoulder height. Half a year after the marriage, Sarah rented a storefront at the alley entrance and opened a small cake shop. Every weekend, Ethan would bring Julian to the shop, pick a corner, order a bunch of food, and sit for half a day, rain or shine. Father and son rarely communicated. After eating, Julian either did homework, read books, or quietly watched Sarah in a daze. Ethan, on the other hand, never left his computer, busy with work every moment. Only when ordering would Sarah say a sentence or two to them. "What would you like?" This was usually when Julian smiled most happily. He would squint his eyes and point at the menu, and finally, he would always obediently say, "Thank you, Mommy." Ethan would wait until he finished ordering to add faintly, "Coffee is fine. Less ice, no sugar." The three maintained a tacit understanding of seeing each other once a week without disturbing each other's lives. Days moved forward calmly and blandly like this. After entering middle age and experiencing more things, Ethan was no longer as arrogant as before. He slowly faced himself. When he was 45, he accepted an interview. The reporter asked him a question at the end. "Mr. Sterling, you have been divorced from your ex-wife for many years. Why haven't you remarried?" His answer was official and formal. "Too busy with work, no inclination." Once this report was released, Ethan's reputation as a workaholic became even louder. But only he knew that he was just using work to numb himself. After Julian flew to Europe to study abroad, Ethan habitually got on the plane to Riverton and habitually sat in that small shop. But after waiting a long time, he didn't hear his son's voice ordering. He turned his head to see the empty seat and sat in a daze for a long time, not knowing why he came back here. It wasn't until Sarah came over as usual to ask what he wanted to drink, and he looked up to see that face which had begun to show fine lines, that he had a sudden epiphany. All these years, he accompanied Julian flying to this border town 4 times a month, wasting great times in this small corner. Accompanying his son was just a cover. He used this leaf to block his eyes, hiding his true thoughts deep down, letting no one detect them. He even deceived himself completely. But only at this moment did he finally wake up and clearly see his own heart. 5 years before marriage, 5 years after marriage, a total of 12 years. Ethan didn't know when Sarah had walked into the bottom of his heart. He had fallen in love with her so silently. Not friendship, not kinship, but love. It was a pity that until he signed the divorce agreement and went his separate way, he hadn't seen his heart clearly. And by the time he reached the age of 40, just like the sentence Sarah told him, everything was too late. He was afraid Sarah would see through his thoughts, so he stiffly added, "Julian arrived safely yesterday to justify his behavior." A confession that arrived more than 10 years late should not be revealed to others. So after drinking that cup of coffee, he never set foot in Riverton again. Without his son, the house was always cold and deserted. Julian liked sitting in the study, looking through the schedule book Sarah left behind. From the densely packed itinerary arrangements, he slowly understood the fervent love she had never spoken of back then. If they were just a shotgun marriage couple, she shouldn't have cared about his germophobia. She would have thrown his clothes to the servants to wash and dry, instead of spending a lot of time cleaning them herself. If she only treated him as the child's father, she wouldn't have drawn a crying face on the side after he rejected her family outing project. If she didn't like him at all, she wouldn't have constantly asked the assistant about his movements, then coincidentally brought a bowl of hot soup to him when he returned late at night. He flipped through page by page, tracing a day in her life in his mind, until the very last page, which recorded only one thing. October 13, 2024, sunny, today's item. Divorce. First hearing the tune, one does not know the meaning. Listening again, one is already the person in the song. Sarah Miller liked Ethan Sterling very much, but that was a very, very long time ago. Ethan Sterling liked Sarah Miller very much, but that was a secret no one would ever notice again.